Wouldn't it be nice to have several thought leaders in your industry know and love your brand? Start a podcast. Invite your industry's thought leaders to be guests on your show and start reaping the benefits of having a network full of industry influencers. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I am your host for today's episode, Nikki Ivy with Sweetfish Media. Guys, I've got with me today, Jake Braley, Vice President of Marketing for Highspot. Jake, how you doing today?
Doing great, Nikki. Thanks.
Good. Glad to hear it. So guys, Jake and I are going to be talking today about the sales enablement renaissance, some of the trends, and really getting into why it's happening, why now and why at all. And I'm excited to get into it. But before we do all of that, Jake, I'd love for you to just give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you and the folks at Highspot have been up to these days.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So as you said, Nikki, I'm the VP of Marketing at Highspot, really responsible for driving our global demand for our solution. But before Highspot, I've spent time in and around a lot of different technology companies, from large to small. Spent some time at Microsoft. I've seen companies through IPO. So I've got a lot of diverse experiences, but most of my background before Highspot was actually marketing to IT professionals and technology buyers. And so part of what's made this job so interesting for me and really aligning my passions is I get to market to people like myself, and I have a direct understanding and empathy for the kind of pains that the people we're selling and marketing to have lived through because I've lived through it myself. So it's a really good alignment in my career to have that kind of opportunity. So it's been fun at Highspot. I've been here 2 years. In that space of time, we've gone from 50 employees to over 350, and we continue to grow at a pretty rapid scale. And it's exactly what you said at the beginning. It's because this whole sales enablement space is really going through a renaissance. It's extremely hot right now.
So let's get into it, man. I love the way you set this up. So what is it you think is the major reason why we've seen this sort of uptick, more than an uptick, right? This outright spike in the buzziness and in the application and adoption of sales enablement?
Yeah, it's interesting because as a marketing professional, historically, we're often doing a lot of what we call enablement, traditional enablement. Yep. And I've been doing it for 15 years of my career. In fact, when I was at Microsoft, that was a known function, a known term. And it was largely because we had a lot of different products and we were innovating the technology on a, 3 to 5 year basis. So imagine being a seller and having to keep all of that knowledge. It really requires an ongoing function to focus on that. So you fast forward to today and think about what's happened. Well, let's take Microsoft as an example. SaaS software, those innovation cycles are happening constantly. And the number of products that technology is touching is totally proliferated. So you think about being a seller in today's market, and good luck keeping up with your buyers unless you have technology that can address some of the issues of getting knowledge to you at the point in time when you're ready to put it into play and getting to you the things that you need to put into play, meaning the sales assets, your content, the presentations, all of the data sheets, the things you need to use to effectively sell.
Right. And so it's what you and I were talking about offline, right? This traditionally sort of what's thought of as an art, right? In selling being, I hate to use the term, but infiltrated by, I actually love to use the term, being infiltrated by the science and how that's sort of transforming so many different experience. It's transforming the experience of the folks, the practitioners, as it's transforming the experience of the customers, the prospects, and then of course the experience of the folks who enable the practitioners, which is what you're talking about. So why now is this happening at any other time in terms of how it affects what's happening with salespeople?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I think if you look at the market dynamic of what's happening, think of yourself as a buyer, the way that you do research and conduct research for your own personal purchases. The same thing's happening with business buying, right? There's so much more information that's readily available. People who are evaluating solutions, they have free access to a lot of information if they want it. And so on the other side of that, if you're a sales rep, you're not only expected to meet that knowledge level, which if you think about it, that's close to impossible. If I'm selling hundreds and hundreds of products and I have buyers who are asking, 3 specific questions on these 3 specific SKUs, I better be equipped real time to answer that, to add value. And what's more than that is those buyers expect a seller to add value beyond just the base level of knowledge. And so to do that, if you think about a seller that's operating that environment, you have to have technology and support on your side to be able to address that dynamic. The other thing that's happening, Nikki, is if you look at even more traditional industries, technology is touching everything now. And so, let's take tractors as an example. Those are highly sophisticated machines now with, onboard IoT and a lot of sophisticated technology. And so even in traditional industries, those sellers have to have a level of technical depth that historically that wasn't the case. And so the need to have an increased level of knowledge and ongoing training and learning has totally spiked. And because of that, sales enablement has become a must-have for a lot of companies to just be competitive in the environment that we're dealing with today.
Yeah, what's interesting is you talked about how you as a marketer have been doing this. I mean, it's called sales enablement, right? But you as a marketer have been doing it for 15 years. And there's so much talk these days about, companies who experience this misalignment between sales and marketing when not really, because marketers have been doing this sales function, really, this enablement, which is a sales function all this time. And I think that that's the key, right? That's the sort of bridge in a way that's necessary and that I think is going to sort of propel the profession in the space and keep improving the experience for people involved. Talk a little bit about in your experience or just in your expertise, the role you think sales enablement plays in that alignment.
Oh, it's huge. And I'm going to go past marketing because really the whole renaissance and redefinition of sales enablement, that term used to mean sales department enablement. It used to mean enabling sellers. The way I think about that as a term today, we're really talking about how do you enable your organization to drive more sales? And so it's not just about a traditional sales rep or a salesperson, it's any customer-facing role in the organization. And especially in large organizations, but I've also been in some smaller organizations, all of those touch points and those customer-facing roles, unless you have good alignment across all of those teams, you can be delivering a very disjointed customer experience, a very disjointed brand experience. And as a marketer, you care a lot about that. In fact, you call them sales artists. I think that's a great term because in the old days, what happened is, the salesperson has their go-to sales deck that they store on their hard drive. And over 2, 3, 4 years, that thing becomes the Franken deck, which has multiple brand elements in it, multiple messages, whether they're current or not. And I've seen a lot of sales artistry with some slides that marketing never produced. And so you're right to say there's a love-hate relationship with the seller who's going out there and figuring out the best way to sell. But as a marketer, you're saying, well, my gosh, we're so far off brand. At the same time, marketing is hungry for understanding why is a seller adapting that? And what are they adapting? And is it working? And so with the technology we have available today, and that's exactly what Highspot does, we're a sales enablement platform, now you have that captured and you can actually get visibility into, oh, I see what's being changed and adapted. And not only that, one better, which we've never had, are those changes effective? Is it driving higher engagement? And is it driving more closed deals? So there's the alignment aspect, I think, is super important. And the only way to do that is to have all of this available in one centralized repository that's always current, it's always up to date. And through AI and machine learning, which is a big part of why now we have these technologies available, they get smart about, hey, look, these are the pieces of content that have worked in the past. So based on the engagement you have in front of you, customer-facing role, here are the things you should use, and here's how to use them. And so that's really the big thing that sales enablement technology addresses today.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have stricken that balance that we talked about between the art and the science. And I think the more salespeople start to embrace and think about themselves as artists/scientists, and the more marketers get credit for the art that they produce, or at least the art that they enable, the better off we're going to be. So that's it. The sales enablement renaissance. Why is it happening? Because sales is changing. Why is it happening now? Because more than ever, we have the technology to make it happen and to make it happen in an effective way. And, how can folks make the most of it and capitalize? Strike that alignment. Go make friends.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I couldn't have said it. And it's really true. That's the thing. I've lived this now. And for me, having dealt with this pain so many years in my career and to have a solution for it, that's awesome in and of itself. And I have the luxury of also in the role that I have being at Highspot that I get to evangelize to others so that they don't have to feel the pain anymore. So it's an exciting time with what's happening in the sales and marketing space. And I just think with the technology we have available today, we're just going to continue to see incredible innovation that lets people do their jobs better and lets an organization be much more aligned. So I think those are the historical pain points, and I'm seeing those things get better. So it's really exciting time for us in technology right now.
For sure. We've all of us in this space have sort of a front row seat to, this big tide shift that's happening. And I think, like you said, there's no other word to describe it. It's an exciting time. So now, Jake, that I have successfully picked your brain and seen what jewels I could get out of it, I am interested in what you are putting in it. Tell us, Jake, about what learning resource you've been engaging with recently that is, informing your approach or that's just got you excited these days.
It's interesting. There's a lot of things that excite me. If I think about the literature and some of the things that I think are new and interesting, a book called Naked Sales is actually one that I've recently read. And it's really, it's applying kind of some of the concepts of design principles. But really, at the end of the day, what it's about putting yourself into the empathy seat of a customer by going and experiencing firsthand. It's the tactile. Let me actually not just do research. It's actually ironic in some ways. It's the opposite of the technology. It's actually going and putting yourself through the paces of what does it feel like to be a customer, to be working with the company. So as a seller, you can be much more value add to that engagement. And so we go back to as a seller today, you have to raise the bar in what you're bringing to the table. You have to come with new insights and new value add to actually add something to that selling process. And I think that book nails that concept by saying, look, you got to take it to the next level and go and figure it out.
Yeah, I definitely want to read this. It sounds like I was just having a conversation the other day with my colleague here, Logan Lyles, who's director of partnerships and co-host the show. And we were talking about this idea of going, beyond when we say we're doing research, right? When we say we're doing something that's targeting and blah, blah, blah. But going beyond persona and going to the actual person, right?
Yes, that's right.
And so, letting that sink in. And so there was this guy I interviewed on the show, and he has this book, I believe it's called The Compelling Proposal. And part of what he does is he consults salespeople, but he also consults buyers who are going through the process of, making these SaaS purchases and things like that. And so he gave all these insights, and it sounds like a lot like what this book is talking about, right? Is sort of literally putting yourself into the shoes of the folks who are going through that journey and the type of insight that you can't get anywhere else that will come out of that sort of experience. So yeah, thank you. That's a really great recommendation. I hadn't heard that one yet. So just like me, I know everybody listening has become a fast fan of yours and is going to want to follow along with you and what the folks at Highspot are up to. How can folks connect with you, Jake?
Oh, give me a call on my cell phone. Give me a buzz on my pager. No, I'm kidding. Email. Shoot me, all the usual places. You can find me on LinkedIn. My last name is Bray. It's pronounced Brawley. It's
I've been saying Brayley this whole time.
Hey, that's okay. It's hard to know, but there's a legacy there that I think got truncated at some point. So I kept the pronunciation, even though pronunciation.
No.
It doesn't matter.
I'll tell you why. So Nikki, folks who've listened to the show may have heard me say this before. Nikki is short for Shaniqua. It's one of the classic African-American names from people born in the 1980s, of which I'm extremely proud. But people butcher it. And around the second grade, I got sick of being called all names that are not mine. And so I'm really like hyper vigilant typically about pronouncing people's names correctly. And so it's like people who know me, who hear this are going to be like, anyway.
I'm not offended. I'm just my job to educate on my surname for all my forefathers. That's all. And the good news is my email doesn't have that in there. So it's just Jake@Highspot. That's easy enough.
That's right. And you don't know how to pronounce it correctly to find them on LinkedIn. So thank you so much, Jake, for being on. The types of things that you and I have talked about, I could do a whole other show about. So we'll have to have you on again.
We'll do that. Let's do that.
Thanks so much, man. You have a good one.
I would love to. Okay, bye, Nikki.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.